Hey everybody, this is the time that the Las Vegas Stadium Authority meeting is to start. Here is, they actually are now on YouTube. However, and that's the meeting waiting to start right now. I thought it was going to also be on Zoom, so the public could attend, right? How they're handling this is, a little interesting. Let's just say interesting is the term. Hold on, because they're normally supposed to give you some time. They have the link up, but they are supposed to give you a way to access it. They have the access code and the phone number, but they don't have it. They're really, look, I understand why they're doing it, but I can't say that I'm one who agrees with, that kind of approach, right? As to what's happening here. So it's trying to get what's going on here. That's my personal meeting. This is home. So if I want to join, meeting ID there. Okay. I don't know what the meeting ID is for this event. Okay. I have no earthly conception of what's happening. Let's see. I have Muzak. Yeah, I have Muzak. Yeah, that's about it. We have nice Muzak. Hear that? And little else. They are governed by the Nevada Open Meetings Law. So, here they are. They're all coming in. And let's see here. The only link they provided was the YouTube link. Okay. So there's a few pictures, not so many. Let me just get a closer look at what's going on there. Okay. Maybe so you can have some idea of who's doing what, all right? But yeah, they are. I'm going back to the page to see. It says watch the Stadium Authority Board meeting live, but it doesn't discuss how to actually attend the meeting. And so this is an issue. I mean, you can watch the meeting, but you can't physically attend it. Okay. And I think you'd have to look at the agenda for it. And I suppose it's going to be at the bottom of the agenda. Okay, members, provide written comments. Oh, I see. You have to expect, and it's like join and enter. Oh, I see. Never mind. Read it. This one. All right. Okay. Okay. Here it. Never mind. It's not Zoom. It's WebEx. Okay. Start for free. They've got something different going on here. All right. Okay. Sign up. Oh, wait a minute. Join a meeting. Hold on a second. Join a meeting. Sorry about that. This is what happens when you're stupid, folks, and you don't read things. I was stupid. I didn't read the document. It tells you specifically how to join by a Cisco WebEx, okay? And I believe I found it. So my apologies to the Stadium Authority because they made it quite clear, okay? And there it is. It says join meeting, and I'm in. So I'm in, and Okay. And so I'm continuing there. Install. Okay, move face.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We can hear you loud and clear.
We ready to go?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay.
All right.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. We will call to order the September 17th, 2020 Las Vegas Stadium Authority Board meeting. And we will call the roll to make sure we have a quorum. We kind of see who's joined. I don't think Vice Chair Epstein, although I see him, I don't. Lawrence, are you able to join us?
I'm on the line. I'm here.
Oh, okay. Great.
I'm here.
I don't think Ms. Aguayo Klein can join us today. Gio, are you on? I didn't think so. Mr. Hornbuckle? Bill's scheduled to join, but maybe just a little late. Ms. Jones Blackhurst?
I'm right here.
Mr. Newcomb?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Mr. Taberti? Voices that have been submitted. That's what is happening here. All of those lanes have been bonded around, so this is not putting the stadium in any jeopardy in this kind of normal course of closing out the project. And in addition to that, I'll just point out that for all the work done inside of the guaranteed maximum price contract, this is an issue for Martinson McCarthy to resolve with their subcontractors, material suppliers. Whatever the result is to the benefit or detriment of Martinson McCarthy. It really shouldn't affect the Raiders even at that point, and it certainly will not affect the stadium or the stadium authority. So just kind of wanted to remind everyone, we've talked about that over the last number of years, but if you don't go through that on a regular basis, it's pretty easy to forget. So with that, I'll ask the board if you have any other comments you would like to make at this time.
Mr. Chair, this is Laura Fitzpatrick. If I might, just real quickly, on the morning of August 8th, I took the time to go over to the stadium, was delighted that I could actually park in a parking lot instead of along Polaris. Took a walkabout, strolled around the entire stadium, took some pictures. It was beautiful. Can't wait to get inside. Just as I was about to leave,
Can you hear me okay?
heard behind me a screech and a crash and this awful metal sound, and someone had turned in from Dean Martin Drive and just hit the guardrail and decided, well, I'm not going to back up. I'm just going to go through it. And unfortunately, I'd thrown my cell phone in the car and I couldn't reach it, but I did hop in my car and found a security person and let them know about it. So I don't know if that's our first official property damage claim, but back to the more important thing, to Don Webb and everyone that's been involved in this. What a glorious structure. Can't wait to get in it.
A motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye. Hey, great. Thanks for that. I think we all agree with that. Any opposed? Must have been a Chiefs fan driving just in the car. Huh?
I sat around for a while. I thought, what you can do is come tell somebody. There were a lot of cars in the parking lot.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 5. We had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting, which was on July 16th. I'd entertain any recommendations to edit those minutes, and if not, I'd entertain a motion.
Ken Evans moved to approve the minutes as presented.
Jen goes back in a second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Okay, agenda item 6, turn it over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to provide an update to you and all the members of the Stadium Authority Board this afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to go through our project status report for August of 2020. As of August 31st, all reports have generally indicated the stadium project is on schedule and on budget. The project received its temporary certificate of occupancy, or the TCO, on July 30th, 2020, and the final certificate of occupancy on August 31st, 2020. All reports now indicate that the project includes all required elements and has met or exceeded the project standards set forth in the Stadium Development Agreement, as well as Senate Bill 1. The project budget increased by $11.7 million to $2.01 billion during the August reporting period. Please note that the increase is simply the result of the third-party activation work that the Stadium Authority Board conditionally approved at its September 16, 2019 meeting. The total for this work now stands at $36.5 million and is expected to reach $47.4 million by the time the project is closed out. That's the only difference between the budget that you've seen previously and today. 30 funding notices have been processed by the Stadium Authority, totaling $1.88 billion, approximately 92.8% of the aggregate project budget. The Stadium Authority contributions currently stand at $700 million, or 37.3% of total outlays, and 93.3% of the Stadium Authority Board's $750 million maximum contribution. Both Senate Bill 1 and the Stadium Development Agreement require that the last $50 million to be paid by the Stadium Authority be applied to the last $50 million of the project. At present, there are approximately $140 million of project costs remaining. This is about $130 million within the standard budget and about $10 million in those third-party activations. Personal seat license proceeds account for $549 million, or about 29% of total project costs. Stadco, the Raiders credit facilities, comprise about $590 million, or 31% of total project costs to date. And Stadco's cash contributions to fund the third-party activations make up the remaining $36.5 million, roughly 1.9% of the total. The project schedule, as I mentioned before, has been met in terms of the project closeout. It is expected for November of 2020, a date which has not changed. In terms of the project contingency, the contingency now remains at $24.3 million, with the balance of the contingency for both the furniture, fixtures, and equipment and infrastructure, as those elements of the project are being closed out, returned back to the project budget. The closeout GMP contingency stood at $602,000, roughly 2% of the GMP balance to complete, which also accounts for retention. Change orders processed during August totaled $681,000, bringing total change orders for the project to $143.2 million. Stadco, or the Las Vegas Stadium Events Company, submitted its monthly progress report on September 14th, 2020. It provided all of the routine updates, and Stadco noted that it met expected timelines for both substantial completion and has received the final certificate of occupancy as noted previously. To this end, Stadco noted that with construction complete, they are now actively closing out the project. The construction monitor, Joan LaSalle, issued Site Observation Report 36. The site report supported a draw of $41.8 million, inclusive of $11.7 million in third-party activation expenses, and certified that 1, all design agreements remain in full force and effect and have not been modified. 2, there has been no material deviation in stadium costs. 3, all required permits have been issued and are in effect. 4, all current draws are being used for the project. 5, the project is proceeding on schedule and will be completed by the scheduled completion date. 6, all funds previously requisitioned have been used for their intended purpose. 7, that there have been no material change orders other than those permitted by the development agreement and design build agreement. And finally, that the construction monitor has no knowledge of any vendor's liens, mechanic liens, or security interests that should not be satisfied or discharged before the immediate payment request. The construction monitor did notice that the project and work within the stadium was substantially completed in general accordance with the construction documents and and other pertinent documents that JLL had received and reviewed to date. They further indicated that the quality of the workmanship on the project has been good, and that the construction monitor finally noted that there were some closeout items that remained, but the project was on track to close out in accordance with the approved budget and the project closeout schedule. Finally, Grand Canyon Development Partners provided its report on September 8, 2020. That report concluded, with the final certificate of occupancy issued, in our opinion, the stadium project has achieved all project elements originally envisioned and anticipated as set forth in the Stadium Development Agreement and Senate Bill 1. We believe that Allegiant Stadium is a first-class NFL facility and that the stadium has achieved a quality level and finish as originally anticipated and consistent with the original design documents. Grand Canyon Development Partners has now transitioned its efforts from monitoring construction to monitoring project closeout, including ensuring all required documentation is in order. Mr. Chairman, I have additional updates, but as we've done in the past, perhaps pausing here to see if there's any questions relative to our status update for August would be appropriate, and then I'm happy to jump through the balance of the items we've been working on over the past couple of months.
Any questions for Jeremy? Jeremy, I'll just make a comment here, and I wanted to wait to make this until you gave that update. Obviously, the stadium stayed on track in terms of its schedule. Some of you may remember that Don Webb once or twice mentioned that it would be done by July 31st. And in fact, that happened. And I when he said that emphatically 18 months ago, he probably got a few eye rolls from us. And he and Mortensen McCarthy and the entire workforce on that project and the Raiders organization made that happen. Kind of in conjunction with that comment, you may recall that when the legislature passed the law in 2016, it created a stadium district, which is a 25-mile radius around Clark County. So on July 31st, I sent Don a note. I just wanted to make this a public declaration. I declared July 31st, 2020, within the stadium district as Don Webb Day. I think we will each year on July 31st remember Don and remember the fact that even though that seemed like a pretty uphill goal, that he achieved it. So I want to thank Don and Mortensen McCarthy and the Raiders and all the workers out on the project for making that happen. That was a very difficult schedule to maintain. A lot happened along the way. But thanks to all of them for doing it. So, Jeremy, I'll let you proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Within the materials that have been provided to you, they are all labeled relative to the tabs that would normally be provided to you in an in-person meeting. I'll just reference those in order and make my way through them. Tab 6A, tab 6 really has an A and a B. These are the revenue reports. There are two versions of them. In the first of those revenue reports, for the fiscal year 20 through June 30th of that year, and then FY 2021 through July. Tab A is the 2020 final numbers for room tax. June collections totaled $742,200. That was down 81.3% from the prior year. Collections for the fiscal year totaled $36.9 million, 25.5% lower than fiscal year 2019. Tab 6B provides the room tax for the current fiscal year that we're in for the period to date. This includes July collections. They totaled $1.2 million, down 71.5% from the prior year. Obviously, revenues have been dramatically affected by the COVID-19 crisis, and although we've seen some improvement in the most recent data, obviously there's a long way to go. These are largely a function of they parallel the visitation statistics in June and July. The destination hosted about 1.4 million visitors in July. That's about 40% of last year's level, but up from the approximately 1.1 million visitors that were hosted in June. Obviously, convention, trade show, international traffic continues to be low, if at all, within the market. Room occupancy weighted for reported room inventory ranged between 41% and 43%, about half historical levels, and average daily room rates averaged $104 for both of the months we're reviewing here today, between 14 and 18% lower than typical levels. Also, those numbers are being brought down by reductions in resort fees and the like. Tab 6C provides the financial summary report, essentially the summary interim report that we provide other than the larger documents that are provided about every 3 months, every 4 months to the Stadium Authority Board in terms of the budget in total. These are obviously a little bit easier to get through than those larger documents. So this is tab 6C. Brian Haynes has it up on the screen for you to see what I'm referring to. Project funding through April, as I mentioned earlier, totaled almost $1.9 billion, 93% of the total project budget. In terms of stadium finances overall, I just mentioned room taxes. Again, I'll just mention that through June 2020, room taxes were $36.9 million. This was sufficient to cover debt service payment of $34 million. An estimated $722 million will actually flow in to the debt service reserve for FY 2020 as revenues came in slightly above the amount necessary to meet those obligations of the Stadium Authority Board. In terms of expenses, Stadium Authority Board remains on track with the anticipated budget and in fact well below it. Actual Stadium Authority Board expenses for FY 2020 totaled $752,000. That's roughly 1/3 of the budgeted amount available to the Stadium Authority Board. The remaining $1.4 million will be transferred into the debt service fund and be distributed as part of the waterfall distribution in the normal course for revenue that is not either required to operate the Stadium Authority Board or to make the bond payments. In terms of the debt reserve, through August, the 2-year debt reserve balance totaled $68.6 million, or 76% of the 2-year reserve required by Senate Bill 1. To date, the debt reserve includes $11.4 million of interest proceeds that have been transferred, that are transferred each month to that account. Staff is coordinating with the county and bond counsel on revenue and cash flow projections in anticipation of potentially utilizing debt reserve funds for fiscal year 2021. The authority budgeted about $19 million in debt reserve fund to pay required debt service in fiscal year 2021. We believe that projection to remain on track today. Tab 6D is the Allegiant Stadium by the numbers. And Brian will bring this up. We provided it to you. We get questions all the time relative to specifics about the stadium and wanted to try to memorialize that in a single document. Who are the developers? Who are the parties that worked on the project, which are shown on the boxes on top, but also some of the technical details specific to the stadium. Some of the interesting notes about what makes it special and what makes it different. It's a 2-page summary. It's relatively straightforward, but we hope that you find it interesting, and certainly we hope that the public that comes to the Stadium Authority website or relevant information to them. I do want to extend my thanks both to Tony Cosentino with Grand Canyon Development Partners, as well as all the folks at CA Icon, as well as Don Webb and his team for assisting us in pulling all this together. Obviously, as the chairman said, all of this is a function of their both vision and credit, including the Raiders, Stadco, and all the folks that worked for them. So we're just memorializing it in one additional format. So a few other staff activities, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Staff is coordinating with legal counsel as well as Grand Canyon Development Partners and Stadco to make sure that all of the development phase closeout documents are fully completed as we transition to the operations phase. We also want to extend our thanks to Guy Catino at Levitt Insurance Agency for assisting in the review of all the required insurance coverage documents, which he always does for the Stadium Authority Board, as well as Tony Cosentino, as well as our outside counsel, Mark Arnold with Hutton, in terms of making sure that everything is in order there. UNLV waterfall payments, staff, and the Authority Board's accounting firm, Reuben Brown, have begun working with UNLV to establish baseline net revenues generated at Sam Boyd Stadium prior to closure. Mr. Newcomb has been instrumental in that process. These figures will ultimately be used at some point in the future to allocate additional waterfall payments to UNLV, and that process is well underway. In addition to that, the FY 2020 audit process has also begun in coordination with both Clark County as the fiscal agent for the state, as well as I. Bailey, pursuant to the Stadium Authority Board's direction and the approval of that contract. In previous meetings, we had indicated the expectation that we would have the results of the audit back at your November meeting. We actually think those are going to come in January. This doesn't have anything to do other than the fact that staff at the county and others have been overwhelmed by some of the accounting and reporting requirements, particularly related to some of the federal dollars that have flowed in to the state of Nevada. We do expect there to be some flex in that schedule, probably a couple of weeks, and that may put at risk our ability to bring back that report to the Stadium Authority Board in November. Again, that's what I had said previously, so I just wanted to make sure everyone was on notice that it may actually be January, depending on when that report is completed. Finally, in terms of the funding notice reconciliations, 30 of those have been completed and processed. Again, our thanks to the county and everyone involved to getting that done. Mr. Chairman, you talked a bit about lien information. We continue to report and track that. Obviously, what's happening now is in accordance not only with Senate Bill 1, but with the development agreement, and we'll continue to do so and brief the board as necessary and appropriate. Mr. Chairman, that's our update in terms of the work over the past couple of months. I certainly appreciate the opportunity. Be happy to answer any questions should the board have any.
Any questions for Jeremy? Okay, we're going to take agenda item 8 before agenda item 7, so we'll turn this segment over to Mr. Webb. Don?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the overly generous and highly flattering comments earlier. Look, before I start, I will say once again that I've made a fairly successful career out of taking credit for many other people's hard work, and this stadium project's no different. I get a lot of the credit, but it really starts with Mark Davis and his commitment, Mark Bedane, Dan Vencelli, Tom Blanda, and the entire construction crew of thousands, literally thousands of people that made this such a successful project. So I'm happy to be the representative of that and kind of catch the ball, but I realize it's not really mine. Now, ordinarily at this point, I would share a video or at least some photographs of the stadium with you, but with Allegiant Stadium's first event being featured during the upcoming broadcast of Monday Night Football, I'm reluctant to steal ESPN and ABC's thunder since both networks will be showcasing the stadium. So I, along with their advertisers, encourage you to tune in on Monday night and look at the stadium. Instead of showing you a video, I'll subject you to a dry oral update on the project schedule, the budget, safety record, and community benefit steps. And ultimately, I'll turn the benefits program over to Lynn Littlejohn from Mortensen to give you a little more detail on that. First, as to the schedule, and as you noted, typically at this point, I'd begin by reviewing the project schedule, and I'd cite the number of days remaining until substantial completion, and I would reassure this board that we would meet that date, despite the occasional eye rolling skepticism and downright disbelief, which seemed to be fairly apparent occasionally on some of the board members' faces. But as you know, we met the date and substantial completion was achieved on time, or as Mr. Aguero just put it, a day early. And in addition to this accomplishment, in August, Allegiant Stadium was issued an unconditional certificate of occupancy. This is significant since it's not usual, or I should say, since it's not unusual for a major public assembly building in Las Vegas to operate for many months, sometimes more than a year, under a TCO, a temporary certificate of occupancy, before they receive a full occupancy certificate. We, on the other hand, achieved this in less than a month following substantial completion. Now, we're actively finishing off the items on the punch list, which is a very standard practice in any construction. As of today, there are only 412 items on that punch list, none of which would impact our ability to hold a sold-out event if we were permitted to do that. More than 300 of those 412 items, by the way, involve individual stadium seats requiring minor final adjustment or such things as installing a missing cup holder. For a project of this magnitude and speed, a complex building of over 1.8 million square feet that was constructed in 31 months, having a punch list of only 412 items this soon after substantial completion is a tribute to the high level of craftsmanship and management typified by Mortenson McCarthy throughout the entire project. As to the budget, through the current funding disbursement, that's the disbursement that was prepared and is in process right now, we've expended approximately $1.84 billion of our $1.97 billion budget, leaving about $131 million yet to be dispersed. Now, having $131 million yet to be dispersed certainly does not mean that we have $131 million of work yet to be completed. Far from it. As a matter of fact, the total value of that of the remaining punch list that I just described is less than $250,000. But there is a lag between finishing the work in the field, gathering up the information, submitting an invoice for that completed work, and then finally processing and releasing payment for that work. And this normal lag, along with the unreleased contractor contingency or contractor retention, which we are holding, represents nearly all of this remaining $131 million. With the construction completed and settlement of change orders largely accomplished, we are in an extremely good position to assess what the anticipated final costs are going to be. And we're confident that the final costs will remain within the approved budget. I'd also point out that from my perspective, the project budget of $1.97 billion has not changed since it was last approved by the board. However, as part of our normal practice, Stadco continues to report on additional third-party activation costs, which are funded through separate sources outside of that $1.97 billion budget. And one final note on about the budget. Recently, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, the matter of construction liens was raised. And as you also pointed out, I just want to reiterate, not only are such liens very routine and normal in the course of major construction projects, but filing of those liens does not impact the operation of the stadium, nor does it, in our case, present any budget problems, since the amounts claimed in those liens are already embedded into the final cost projection, which, as I just pointed out, is within our budget. Let me talk about safety just for a moment. Even though it's so important and we were so successful, I'd like to dwell on it, but in two sentences or so, with 6 million construction work hours invested in the project, the safety record is really beyond superb. I don't know what other adjective to put to it. The final cumulative accident rate on the Allegiant Stadium construction project was less than 1/3 the national average for large construction jobs. And again, this reflects a commitment from Mark Davis, who I remember when we first started the project signed a banner instead of just win baby, he signed it just safety baby. And that commitment from ownership and through the executive management team of the Raiders and Stadco, and through Mortensen McCarthy is really reflected in what can only be characterized as a superb safety record on this job. And then let me talk just briefly about the community benefits program, and then based on Jeremy's suggestion of adjusting the agenda, I'll ask Lynn Littlejohn to speak more to that, but let me just set it up for her. The community benefits program is another element, along with the design, the schedule, the budget, the safety results, that was highly, highly successful. We have thoroughly exceeded the small business contracting goal, as well as the minority and female workforce diversity goal. We outperformed the SBE contracting goal by better than 150% and hit more than 160% of the workforce diversity goal. So before Lynn speaks further on this, let me just summarize. 168 small businesses were awarded contracts worth nearly $300 million. Now, a $300 million construction project on its own would be considered a large project. And having such a project constructed solely by local small businesses would be unprecedented. Another way to look at this, by the way, it would be that 40% of the stadium authority or the public $750 million contribution toward the stadium's funding, toward its financing, went directly to local small businesses. And to put the minority and female workforce diversity achievements in perspective, based upon reviewing the contractor's certified payrolls, we estimate that the average wage for those workers was approximately $80 an hour. The fully burdened average wage turns out to be around $80 per hour. And so that means that more than $300 million, or 40%, again, 40% of the public $750 million contribution, was paid out in wages to local minority and female construction workers. And I think both of those achievements, along with the design, the quality of construction, the schedule, the budget, speak really highly of how successful this project is. Jeremy, if you'd like, I'll pause for some questions before we ask Lynn to speak further on the community benefits program achievements.
Any questions for Don?
Let me add a question, but I guess a statement. Don is one of the ones rolling his eyes often. And by the way, I lost $300. I had a 3-1 against, but anyways. We'll take
that MCM, baby.
Yeah. But sincerely, I mean, we're extremely grateful. What you guys have done and accomplished has been amazing. It's unfortunate we can't all go Monday night, but we will be there someday in mass and fully supportive. And so just thank you. Great work by the team, obviously great work for the community and this whole group. I mean, Jeremy, the whole group, since it all started literally like 5 years ago now, it's going to make a difference. And so thank you for that. That's all.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Anybody else? Okay, we'll open agenda item 7 and turn it over to Lynn. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. And pleased to just kind of augment and give a little more context to our achievements and results relative to the community benefits program. I would like to say, that on behalf of Mortensen McCarthy, we, took the trust that the Raiders and the Stadium Authority and the community put in us to ensure that this project really did maximize the opportunities and the involvement of the local community there very seriously, and hope that these results we're reporting out today bear that out. I think as SB1 outlined a 15% SBE goal, and as Don commented in his remarks just a few moments ago, we did exceed that goal to the tune of 23%. And as he said, about $300 million worth of work being awarded to 168 different SBE firms local to the community there. What I commented on is also that, those dollar values of those contracts awarded to SBE firms range from about $400 to $15 million. I just given you an understanding that it was really firms of all different sizes and capacity and capability that we engaged in this project. We also know that while there were no designated women and minority business goals, there was approximately $81 million worth of work awarded to 41 different women and minority-owned firms. So as we knew, that was important to engage and involve that community and that business community in the project also. In its totality, there were approximately 900 total businesses involved with the project, not just SBE and WNB, but in its totality. And 70% of all firms, so 70% of that 900 were Nevada-based. So we were, again, intentional and strategic about ensuring that it really was the local business community, contracting community that built the stadium, and especially in light of particularly sports projects having a bunch of scopes of the work that lend themselves to national firms, just giving what they are and where those firms reside. Again, just being intentional to ensure to the greatest extent possible that it was the local business community engaged here. With regard to workforce diversity, you all know the goal was 38% minority and female combined. As Don again alluded to, we exceeded that goal with a 63% participation rate for minority and female workers and 2% veterans. I give some context here that was with about 9,000 craft workers over the life of the project. We actually had 12,000 go through orientation in total, and so again about 3,000 professional staff, if you will, but about 9,000 craft workers, and so again 80% of that workforce being Nevada, and again just really pleased that we were again strategic and intentional with regard to our community engagement and outreach to make sure that the community was aware of opportunities to be engaged in the project. I'll speak a little bit to that with regard to all the other elements that was in the community benefits agreement that the project was subject to relative to ensuring that the small businesses met the definition of small that was set out in SB1. I think as you all remember, that definition was unique to this project and did not align with any other definition of small business either in Nevada or across the country, federally or nationally. So we had to create then a certification process in our own vendor database for firms who met that definition. Pleased to report that we ended up with over 1,600 total firms in that vendor database, about almost 500 of them being SBE certified, and also 200 MBE and almost 200 that were women. So that was very instrumental in terms of being able to ensure that all of the firms who proposed on the work had access to, local firms, local SBE firms to achieve the overall goals that we established for the project. Additionally, with regard to community engagement, it was imperative for us to ensure that we informed the community, both from a subcontractor perspective and a workforce perspective, about the opportunities on the project and particularly the timing of them. And so we were engaged in significant outreach throughout the life of the project, including all of the information sessions, pre-proposal meetings, meet and greets that we, Mortenson McCarthy, hosted, but also engaged in ones that were involved in the community, including Clark County's procurement fairs and expos over the year. We advertised in all the local community newspapers, sent those advertisements and notices about procurement out to contracting organizations, ethnic chambers, community organizations, community leaders. We hosted information sessions and project updates to, again, like WeBank, the women's organizations in town, NAMAC, NAWIC. And I point that out just to say that we didn't just come to the town to build, we just came to be and to give back to the community. The other component that was identified again in the community benefits agreement was about mentoring and technical assistance to the small businesses and women-owned businesses who were involved with the project. And we partnered with Clark County Small Business Opportunity Program to offer classes and seminars to all the SBEs and WMBEs who were involved with the project, produced a brochure, and you can say a handful of firms did take advantage of those opportunities. We also offered internships for high school students to get exposed to the construction industry and to come spend the summers with us on the project site. Again, partnered with Clark County Summer Business Institute internship program, and over the life of the project sponsored 7 high school students over the different summers to spend the summers with us on the project site to learn about what engineers do, how we interact with our trade partners, how we interact with architects and our owners, and what it takes to build a building. I would say those were paid internships that we, Mortenson McCarthy, and our trade partners paid those students. So very well received in terms of, again, just exposing the next generation of youth to our industry and the opportunities that exist for them to be involved in our industry. We were tasked also with ensuring that livable wages were paid to all of the workers. And so we implemented a tracking system, utilized LCP Tracker, which tracks wage and hour compliance, both wages and fringes that were paid to ensure that the prevailing wage, livable wages that was established for this project was indeed paid out to all of the workers involved with this project. One final thing I'll note is that we were also required to have annual stadium kind of outreach. And again, with the outreach events that Mortenson McCarthy hosted, we also participated in the Careers in Motion jobs fairs that was held, and again, our info session. So I think the results of the project speaks for themselves, but we did take our commitment to inclusion of the local community very seriously, and we hope you share our sentiment that the results bear that out. So that's my report, and if anyone has any questions, I'd entertain those. The one other thing I will make is that we will issue a final comprehensive report at the January 2021 Community Benefits Oversight Committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you for leading a very committed and very successful effort. It was an important part of our record of the legislation that passed. It was an important part of our conversations as we finalized all these agreements, and we certainly appreciate your leadership and the entire organization's commitment to making it happen. So thank you. Any questions for Lynn?
I can have it, Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll paraphrase what I think the newspaper said. I think they said I was chomping at the bit to express my overjoy at the results. So I'll say yes, that's absolutely true. We had our Community Benefits Plan Oversight Committee meeting last Thursday. And I want to say again, congratulations and thank you to Lynn Littlejohn for your leadership, as well as your team, and Mortenson McCarthy for producing the results that you did. I also want to make sure that I highlight the fact that thank you to the Raiders, in particular, once again, to the leadership of Mark Bedane and Dan Ventrelli, as well as Don Webb, making sure that diversity and inclusion was part of the culture for getting this done. It wasn't just about minimum compliance, although we paid attention to that. What I'm happy to say is that the culture is what drove us to not only meet, but more importantly, exceed the requirements of the Community Benefits Plan. So congratulations to all involved. I want to pass on the positive comments from one of my colleagues, Peter Guzman at the Latin Chamber, as well as my other colleagues at our Community Benefits Plan Oversight Committee. We were very, very pleased with the results that were produced. Definitely, this project made an impact in the community, especially in light of what we had again, presentation. Thank you to my colleagues on the Las Vegas Stadium Authority Board. I thought it was important that you hear firsthand from Ms. Littlejohn about the results that we were able to achieve during the construction phase. Two things have happened. Number one, thanks to Ms. Littlejohn and her team, we have a great foundation of results that we can build on. And then number two, there's an expectation and a culture in place now that as we move forward and transition into the operations and the concessions phase, that we have something that we can move upon. In fact, last but not least, what I'll say is that ASM Global provided a report that highlights some of the things that they've already begun to do during the transition, and I anticipate that Levy Restaurants will be following suit. Finally, our next meeting, we'll get back on our regular schedule, will be October 29th, where we will continue to build on the great results that Ms. Littlejohn, on Web, and all those involved in the construction phase have produced. So thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ken. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeremy Aguero. If it's appropriate, Mr. Evans talked about ASM Global. They've provided a few highlights of their progress to date. If it would please the committee, I'd like to put those on the record as well.
Sure.
ASM Global provided the highlights in terms of the progress that they've made as we transition from the construction phase of Allegiant Stadium to the operating phase of Allegiant Stadium. ASM Global was provided vendor interest list. This was obviously the brainchild of Mr. Evans. Morton McCarthy developed the same thing. By the time they took over, there were over 2,000 entries and 944 operations-based vendors who were identified in that database. They have all been contacted by ASM Global. In addition to that, ASM Global noted that there were almost 70 email addresses or contacts within that database that were wrong for some reason, generally typos or something along those lines. And they actually took it upon themselves to go out and identify who those individuals were that were not receiving those undeliverable emails. All of those contacts have now received the most recent public proposal request, including those for things like pest control and landscaping services at Allegiant Stadium. To date, more than 350 vendors have provided updated records to ASM Global and have been categorized as local, small, and or diverse based on self-reported data. They, like Ms. Littlejohn just noted, are working on internal verification efforts as they continue to progress. Planning is underway to host targeted events for local, small, and diverse businesses to present capabilities of available goods and services for later in 2020. In terms of community engagement, ASM Global has noted that a community affairs manager position has been filled by Ms. Katrina Dorsey. Obviously, she'll have big shoes to fill after Ms. Littlejohn's formal introduction. The Benefit Oversight Committee and targeted groups are planned for later this month. Workforce, business, and diversity event-based hiring activities across Allegiant Stadium have been temporarily impacted due, obviously, to some of the challenges that have occurred as a result of the pandemic. But ASM Global noted that they're looking forward to continued strategic outreach so they are ready to employ a diverse and ready, able, and willing workforce as soon as possible. That, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to put that additional information on the record.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate you doing that. Appreciate ASM sending it in. We'll move on in the agenda. Our suggestion is to take agenda items 9 through 13 as one general topic. If any board member would like to pull one of those out or talk about any one of those individually, that's fine, but the general concept around these agenda items kind of causes all of these documents to take place. And it is simply an extension of these agreements by a year at the request of the Raiders. Wanted to make sure that the city of Las Vegas, the entire state of Nevada, got a commitment in writing that allowed the community to get entire 30 agreement that we had reached. Functionally, this is very similar to what would have happened if Don hadn't been successful in getting the stadium built and made available this year. That 30-year commitment would have started with the next season. Obviously, that's not the reason that we're not all able to be in the stadium right now, but we're not going to be able to this season. So the Raiders suggested that we extend the lease for a year. That also extends their commitment not to relocate for that same year, as well as these other issues that are reflected in each one of these 5 documents. So, Jeremy, Mark, I'll turn it over to you for a better explanation from that, but I think that's part of the framework.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to Mark Arnold to provide a brief overview. Just as a point of clarification, the extensions are items 10 through 13. Item 9 is slightly different. This is the approval for a maintenance agreement with the county. If it would please the committee, perhaps we could take items 10 through 13 out of order and then come back to 9, take those jointly, and if it's okay with you, do that, and I can turn it over to Mark Arnold to provide that overview.
Yeah, that was a pretty smooth transition for me screwing that out, Jeremy, so I appreciate that. So that'd be just fine, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Mark Arnold. I'm glad Jeremy got to point that out, or else I would have had to. So, as the chairman said, items 10 through 13 are extensions of not only the stadium lease, but also the team use agreement, the UNLV lease, and the non-relocation agreement. The UNLV agreement has been approved informally by representatives of UNLV, but it will not be on UNLV's board until December, but we don't expect there to be a problem there. They get another year like everybody else does. You will see also that we're also, in addition to amending the stadium lease, we're amending what's called the memorandum of lease for both the stadium lease and the team lease. Those are just the documents, the short form documents that are filed in the real property records of Clark County to put everybody on notice. So we amend the lease and then we don't file the full lease. We file a little notice. And so we got to amend that notice to put the right expiration date. So the expiration date of the lease will be, and all these other documents will be 31 years from July 31st instead of 30 years. In addition, the Raiders have their renewal right at the end of that, at that 31st year. So they still have the renewal right that they had in the basic document. The documents are fairly straightforward and simple. They only extend it by 1 year. So there's not any fancy legal language in there or not. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on that from the board? Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve agenda items 10 through 13.
Tommy White, motion to approve.
Ken Evans, second. As well as I want to say thank you to the Raiders and everyone involved for proactively doing this. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, that passes, and we'll go back to agenda item 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item 9 is to review and potentially approve, 1, the revocable license of maintenance agreement with Clark County relating to fiber and irrigation crossing, and 2, the addendum to revocable license and maintenance agreement with Clark County and the Las Vegas Stadium Events Company, LLC. This as well as a possible action item. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll once again turn it over to Mr. Arnold.
Okay, so item 9 is necessitated because in connection with the development of the stadium, even though it's fully leased to Stadco, we are still the owner of the stadium land in the county's eyes. And there's a fiber optic conduit and irrigation conduit that goes under an amalgam of Al Davis Way, Polaris, and Aldebaran Avenues. And I think the Polaris is only the fiber and not the irrigation, but the irrigation goes under the other two. That's a use of a city or a county street. And as a use of county street, the county has to give us permission, as you might imagine, with substantial completion having already been achieved, it's in place. And now the county is asking us to sign this license and maintenance agreement, which obligates the stadium authority to install, operate, and maintain those facilities in the 3 county streets. and, give the county the right to tell us to get out of the county street if they need that area for county ingress and egress. The addendum is a document that we drafted that has the county, Stadco, and the stadium authority agreeing that during the term of the lease, all of the obligations in the revocable license and maintenance agreement are the obligations of Stadco, not the obligations of the stadium authority. The county has not yet approved that document, but it's been given to the county attorney, and we don't expect any real issues with that because that is the business transaction that sits here right now, but there was not another document that would clearly obligate Stadco to abide by these terms. So we thought it was best to do that. So that's why there are two documents, both the license and maintenance agreement and then the addendum. We thought it was easier to do a separate addendum than try to convince the county to change their form of license and maintenance agreement. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions also.
Questions for Mark? Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Bill Hornbuckle, I'd move.
Ken Evans, second.
Good motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Agenda item 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it would please the board, we may want to take items 14 and 15 collectively. These two items, Mr. Chairman, deal with providing clarification relative to the lease with the Department of Aviation for property along Las Vegas Boulevard and Warm Springs. This is the parking property that was brought before the Stadium Authority Board several months ago. At the request of the county, there's been some clarification. Item number 14 provides that clarification relative to the lease. And you'll recall there's a lease between the county and the Stadium Authority Board. And then item 15 is the mirror document that is the sublease between the Stadium Authority Board and Stadco, or the Las Vegas Stadium Events Company. Mr. Chairman, if there are questions relative to this, Mark Arnold is also here to provide it, but hopefully these are relatively straightforward.
Thank you, Jeremy. Mark, anything you want to add to that, or are we just open to questions?
Yeah, let me add just to, so essentially what happened here is that the lease with the county for the parking area correctly in the wording described the parcels that we were leasing from them to use as parking, but the legal descriptions that were attached when the county finalized the lease, they did not attach the legal description of two of the parcels. And so through this memorandum of lease, we are amending the description to correct the Scrivener's error on the county's part to make sure that all the property that was intended to be leased is in fact leased. And then that necessitated our having to go to Stadco and say, hey, we're leasing this from the county. We've got to sublease it all to you. Let's just clarify that all the property that you intend to sublease from us is all accurately described. And so that's what we are doing here. And as Jeremy said, it's at Las Vegas Boulevard and Warm Springs Road.
Great, thanks, Mark. Any questions on that?
Sure, Bill. Maybe just too quick, I don't know who can answer. The economics and the capital for both accrue to Stadco. They're doing the work, I presume, and collecting the monies?
Yes. I mean, the Stadium Authority pays rent to the county. We get that rent from Stadco, and then Stadco builds and charges and gets all the money for the parking.
So we're just a direct pass-through then, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
If there are any more questions, entertain a motion to approve agenda items 14 and 15.
Bill Hornbuckle, so moved.
Anybody interested in making a second?
Second. Sorry about that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, we will open agenda item 16, which is public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to make a presentation before the board?
Yes. Zenny Abraham, Zenny 62 Media. Yeah, thank you. 2 years ago, I talked to Dan Ventrelli and Elliot McCabe, the Bank of America banker, about the tax increment financing that was supposed to be in the original legislation and need to have it back so to capture revenue from property that would be bought. I'm just calling for that again because we're in the middle of a pandemic. But in closing, I want to congratulate everybody on an incredible job. Steve Hill, when I met you at the Las Vegas Commission of Visitors Authority kickoff, I said, you did a fantastic job with Las Vegas then. This is another feather in your cap. Bill Hornbuckle, Tommy White, Ken Evans, and Don Webb for riding a bucking bronco. Congratulations, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Chairman Hill, we have another person who wishes to speak. Aletta Dupree.
Yes, thank you, Chair Hill and members. Alita Dupree, for the record, my pronouns are she and her. I'm figuring out how to do this WebEx thing, touching all these different buttons and figuring out what they are and getting little surprise dialog boxes here. But thank you for the option to comment in this virtual environment. And all I can say is we did it. I remember my days of attending the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee meetings located at the Stan Fulton Hall of UNLV and moving over to our Clark County Commission chambers. And I've been waiting for this because this is about building a home. I hope for a day that I will be able to come in to this great building. I've only been in two stadiums in my life, Shea Stadium and the old Yankee Stadium in New York City. They both have been replaced. We have been able to show the world that we know how to do public construction. We do it safely, timely, and affordably. I do ask that we work on transportation issues to this building, given that the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority recently was given the go-ahead to acquire the monorail and to extinguish the various non-compete clauses. I would like to see something that will bring people directly into the stadium, especially if they don't want to make the long walk over the bridge. So I hope that we will get through this crisis and that more people will come here to our community. I believe we are a safe community. And I believe that we are a place that hopefully will be the first choice of the people to come when they want to visit or live. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, do we have others?
Mr. Chair, there are no other folks in the chat room that would like to speak, although I do have two emails that some folks submitted for the record, so I'll read those in now. The first one is from a Burke Scott Bowe. He says, the Las Vegas Stadium Authority is a public board whose responsibility is to serve the public, not the Raiders or anyone else. The overwhelming majority of the public supports standing for the national anthem. This board needs to approve a resolution stating that the board expects everyone to do so. Thank you. And the next email was from Peter Guzman, the president of the Latin Chamber of Commerce. He writes, hello, I didn't know how to do public comment, but since I'm on the Community Benefits Plan Committee representing the Raiders, I wanted to speak on how positive our final meeting went before the first game of the year and how they superseded all Community Benefits Plan requirements, desires, and goals. It was simply amazing, and I commend Ms. Lynn Littlejohn and Don Webb for the incredible work that has been done to date. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes all of the public comment that we have received.
Great. Thank you, Brian. And thanks everybody for being with us this afternoon. Congratulations again, both to Don, the Raiders, everybody involved for the project and for doing great. We will return in months and 8 or 9-0 by then, and not just 1-0. So, have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks.
Go Raiders.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that's it. And see if I can get back home here to StreamYard. And I got lost. I was in one place, right? And then I went over. So when you go to StreamYard, you're like there, and it goes blank, and it's like, hey, what happened? And it's like, oh, here we are. Okay. And so Muhammad, how you doing? Mama says, wow, Don. Whoa, Don. Or he says, I don't think anyone worried about building completion. I did. But more of how they will pay it off. This project was supposed to be finished May. They're still working on it, okay? And as much as Las Vegas likes to, hey, do the victory lap and say, this is completely done, as I've said again and again and again, and I will continue to say, their work is just beginning. When you build something like this, you go from the construction side to the operations side, and it's on the operations side that they're really going to be feeling it. And they're going to be feeling it because right now they don't have any hope that they're going to achieve that list of 49 events needed to reach that magical internal rate of return of 8.48%. Okay. So that's a big problem. A big one. And so I'm going to take this all up more later tonight. But you know, I had to say it. I know there were maybe people who didn't like or don't like that I compliment them, but I didn't. My intention was not to come in to pick fights. When I got involved in this, it was because, first of all, I have a media company, covered CES, covered the NFL, live in Oakland, love Oakland, want Oakland to have NFL football, wanted the Raiders to be in Oakland. And from, personally for me, I've said it before, I wasn't put in charge of anything. And yet, the mayor could have done that. So the lesson that I learned from that is nothing, because I participated in a way that caused my media business to build. So if anything, what I learned was how to build a media business around a political and economic controversy. That's what Zenny 62 Media in its corporate form was born from. Okay. So the question is, how do you have time to do X, Y, and Z? This is part of the business. But that aside, I've always loved Las Vegas culture, and it really does have a culture unto itself. And that's because of the way my mom brought me up. And so, I'll deal with this in a second. And so, it was something, covering CES Las Vegas, something I was doing long before the Raiders issue started with Las Vegas. And the man, Stephen Hill, was someone I tried to contact long before this came up, when he was working in the governor's office, Brian Sandoval. And I called, I was trying to get him, just reach the man. Couldn't even reach him, because as a trained economic development professional, what he does, or what Dan Doctoroff did in trying to bring the Olympics to New York, or what I did in trying to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland. Okay. That's hard stuff to do. It's fun stuff. Sometimes you don't win, like my case with the Super Bowl. Sometimes you win in the case of a relocation. It's a whole unique subculture of people and approaches and thoughts and ideas that jumps party, neither Democrat nor Republican. And it's true economic development. And so when I see someone, and I have the opportunity and the pleasure to meet someone who's at the top of their game, like Steve Hill, that's a big deal. I was pleased as punch to be able to meet him at the groundbreaking for the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority Center expansion. That was a lot of fun. Even as much as now Governor Steve Sisolak says, you're not here to mess up our project, are you? You're not here to cause trouble, are you? I thought, oh, brother. No. So it's a real milestone for them, and it's a new day for them, and it comes at a tough time. That's why I was pushing for the tax increment financing zone. Though it says California Democrats do not like professional sports. No, it's not that. It's a great comment to leave for discussion. And I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem isn't that California Democrats don't like professional sports. It's, I think, some California Democrats. I'm a California Democrat. I love professional sports. Remember, I worked to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland, California. We lost to Jacksonville. Now, yeah, the mayor then, who became California Governor, Jerry Brown, didn't like professional sports. And I think it's for a set of reasons that it's like some people like to think of themselves as intelligent because they don't like sports, right? And Jerry is one of those people that falls into that place. I am the opposite. And I go with the old saying, it's the more complex the mind, the greater the need for the simplicity of play. All right. But look, also, for me, I've always liked the people I've met in Las Vegas. That goes before this. And I've contemplated moving there. I'm not going to now. I have my life set with my mom's needs for me and everything else. But I've always loved it, going back to the days of, the Rat Pack and everything else. The sad part about it is there's always been racism, in that. I can't change the past, but the way that I grew up was, I'm not going to let that affect my life. It's hard to do, but you got to do it. Now, as far as this project, as far as I'm concerned, the project has a financial problem that is gigantic. All right. And it goes to the operation of the stadium, and it needs the federal government bailout. And so I hope the Stadium Authority has a way to have some private come to Jesus meetings to talk about these problems. They talked about the Raiders extending their lease by 1 year, but the reasons were given were kind of like, oh, huh? It's really a good idea to have it extended by the 1 more year so that you have 1 more year to be able to collect the tax. That's really the idea. But no one wants to admit that, hey, look, no one wants to admit this bond issue is in trouble, but it is. Okay. I didn't want to, I didn't want to get on there and hurt people's feelings. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. And unfortunately, I missed congratulating Lynn Littlejohn and all this. And look, Jeremy O'Grilla and Brian Haynes, and I owe Brian Haynes an apology, which I'm going to get to him. So we'll recap this more. I have some other things I need to take care of. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. We'll see you.